The National Weather Service in Paducah says poor air quality may linger through Tuesday as smoke drifts southward toward the area. Waylon Wells-Parker talked with health officials and weather experts and has more on what you should know.
Even though the Canadian wildfires are far away from southern Illinois, the smoke is still affecting our air. Monitors have reported the air quality to be between moderate to unhealthy for sensitive groups. That means the pollutants in the air may be unhealthy for people who are more sensitive, such as children, older adults, and those with heart or lung problems.
People that are prone to allergies, of course, are going to notice that those might be flaring up a little bit more because there's just more stuff in the air to irritate it. But the real concern is for people that have like COPD and asthma.
Dr. Jeff Ripida with Shawnee Health says people who may be easily affected by air quality should not be outside for long periods of time.
Anybody that has bad COPD really should be taking it easy. And the truth is most of them will instinctually know that because if they do too much, they're gonna feel short of breath. They're gonna feel like crud.
He says poor air quality can also increase the risk for respiratory illnesses.
Anybody that generally has a lung disease, they're just gonna be more predisposed to getting bronchitis, to getting pneumonia, to getting pneumonitis or any other kind of respiratory illness when they get when the air quality goes down.
Meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Paducah says the smoke is mostly concentrated farther north across southern Illinois.
Around Marion and Carbondale, it's maybe not quite as concentrated, but you still may notice that there's some smoke in the air. But as you start going north from there, it'll just get a little more dense.
Forecasters say the poor air quality could linger through Tuesday.
And we should start to see some improvement probably later to Tuesday afternoon, and especially as we go into Wednesday and Thursday of this week.
Experts also recommend to listen to your body. If you're having trouble breathing or you don't feel well, you should seek medical care.